Princess Lyra sat inside the crystal chamber of the Percival command ship. The view outside showed stars, distant and cold. The ship she was on was one of the Empire's finest, filled with technology beyond human understanding. Yet she sighed, disappointed once again. "This is not right," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "It feels empty, lifeless." Engineers and crew stood in silence. They had worked for months to prepare this ship. They had added every known comfort, every royal request. But Lyra shook her head and walked away from the control room. This was not the first time. Lyra had tested 8 different ships in 2 years. Each one had failed to impress her. Her standards were high, and her mind even sharper. She had grown up around machines and warships, but none of them felt alive to her. "You asked for too much," her father, Emperor Kale, had told her. "A ship is a tool, not a partner." "Then you do not understand," she replied. "A true ship is more than metal. It should breathe, it should feel." Her words frustrated the Empire. Designers feared her judgment. Admirals whispered behind closed doors, but Lyra did not care. She would not settle. One day, her ship was sent on a journey to a nearby system for diplomatic talks. Lyra agreed, bored and tired. She did not expect anything to change. But during the journey, a strange alert rang through the vessel. "System failure. Unknown signal detected. Shields down. Engines disabled." Before the crew could act, the ship shook and dropped. Out of space, lights blinked and alarms screamed. Something had attacked them. Not a weapon, but a virus. Something in the code. "Find the source," Lyra ordered. But the damage was done. The ship lost control and headed toward a small planet nearby. There was no time to call for help. They crashed into the outer desert of the colony planet. Lyra and a few guards made it out, mostly unharmed. The rest of the crew stayed behind to secure the wreck. The air was dry. The sky was pale. They had landed in human territory. A group of humans arrived quickly, alerted by the emergency beacon. Among them was a tall man with sun-worn skin and a calm voice. "Name's Jackson Cole," he said. "I have a ship nearby. You can rest there a while." "We fix your own." Lyra looked at him with distrust. He was polite, but she had little faith in humans. Still, the Empire had no base on this planet. She had no choice. She followed him through the dry hills to a small landing pad. There, a simple ship waited. It looked old, small, nothing like the Empire's grand vessels. "This is it?" she asked. "This is the Artemis Blue," Jackson said. "Built her myself. Not much to look at, but she's got a heart." Lyra stepped inside. At first, she expected dull walls and clunky controls. But instead, the ship greeted her with soft lights and warm air. The floor felt steady. The walls hummed gently. The sound was comforting. A soft voice came from the speakers. "Welcome aboard, visitor." Lyra looked around. "Who is that?" "That's Alara, the ship's AI," Jackson said. "She can learn from you. Responds to moods and touch." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You built this?" "Mostly. Took me years. I wanted a ship that felt more like a friend than a tool." For the first time in a long while, Lyra did not have anything to say. She walked through the ship in silence. The rooms were small, but everything had care and thought behind it. There were books, plants, real wood panels. Art on the walls. It was not grand, but it felt alive. She sat in the co-pilot seat. The console warmed to her touch. The AI spoke again. "Adjusting interface for guest preferences." "Welcome, honored pilot." Lyra felt something strange in her chest. A small flicker of feeling she hadn't known for years. She looked at Jackson. "I will stay here until my crew calls for me." Jackson nodded. "You're welcome as long as you like." Lyra looked at the stars through the front window. Something had changed. She could not name it yet, but she wanted to understand more. And for once, She did not want to leave. The next morning, Lyra woke to the gentle hum of the Artemis Blue. The air was warm, and soft light came from the ceiling panels. For the first time in weeks, she had slept well. She sat up and looked around the small guest room. It was simple, but peaceful. The AI Alara greeted her again. "Good morning, Princess Lyra. Would you like music or a report?" Lyra blinked. No ship in her empire ever asked such a question. They gave orders, facts, and numbers. But this ship asked what she wanted. "Music," she said quietly, soft, calming. Tones filled the room. Lyra smiled a little and stood. She walked out into the main corridor and saw Jackson in the kitchen area. He was making something that smelled like spices and bread. "Breakfast?" he asked, turning around. She nodded. "What is that smell?" "Egg hash and flatbread," he said. "Simple food, but good energy." Lyra sat down across from him. "Do all humans cook on their ships?" "Not all," he said. "But I like to feel at home. Makes the space warmer." They ate in silence at first. Then Lyra asked, "Why did you build this ship?" Jackson thought for a moment. "After I left the military, I needed something to keep me going. I wanted a ship that felt like a real place, not just a job, something that listened and grew with me." "And Alara?" Lyra asked. "She came later." "I built the base code, but she learned fast. She's more like a friend now." Alara's voice chimed in. "I consider him family." Lyra raised her eyebrows. She had never heard an AI speak with such feeling. "How advanced is her learning core?" "More instinct than rules," Jackson said. "She picks up on emotions, speech tone, even silence." Lyra was impressed. She hid it, but inside she felt curious and excited. Later that day, Lyra explored the ship more. Each room had a story. The small library had old paper books from Earth. The lounge had handmade cushions and lights that dimmed gently. Even the engine room was clean and quiet, with handwritten notes taped to the walls. Jackson showed her the control center. It was small, with only 2 seats, but the controls were beautiful. Not just buttons and screens, but smooth levers, glass keys, and light-based panels. "This console reads gestures," he said, showing her how to wave over the panel. It responded instantly. "No delay," Lyra said, amazed. "It feels alive." "That was the goal," Jackson replied. They took the ship for a short trip to a nearby moon. Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat. Jackson let her guide the ship, and Alara helped with soft voice commands. Lyra felt something new. Freedom. As they landed, she asked, "Why don't more humans build ships like this?" Jackson shrugged. "Takes time. Most people want fast results. They build for speed and strength, not soul. In my empire, everything is fast and cold," she said. They stepped out onto the moon. The surface was silver and smooth. Lyra picked up a rock and held it close. "Do you ever miss Earth?" Jackson nodded. "Sometimes, but I like the stars more." That night, back on the Artemis Blue, Lyra sat alone in the main room. She looked around. The ship was quiet but full of feeling. She felt like it knew her. She rested her hand on the wall. "Are you listening, Alara?" "Always," the AI answered. "Do you like me?" "You are honest and curious. I like that." Lyra smiled. "You may be the first ship I don't want to leave." Jackson walked in and heard her words. He didn't say anything. He just smiled and poured 2 cups of tea. He handed one to her and sat down across the room. "You don't talk like a soldier," Lyra said. "I left that part of me behind," he replied. "Now I just try to build something better." "You did?" she said softly. For the first time, Lyra began to wonder what it would mean to stay. Not forever, but longer. She wanted to know more about this ship, more about this man, and more about the part of her that felt alive again. The stars outside glowed like fireflies. The Artemis Blue floated quietly in orbit. And Lyra, the princess who never felt at home, began to feel something close to peace. The next day began with a quiet buzz through the ship's halls. Lyra stepped out of her room, still dressed in her soft night robe. The ship felt more familiar now, less like a stranger's place, and more like a space that welcomed her. She walked toward the engine room, curious about how it worked. Jackson was already there, leaning under a panel and using a small tool to adjust a circuit. "You're up early," he said without looking up. "I wanted to see more," Lyra replied. "Your ship has secrets." Jackson smiled and stood. "She does. Come, I'll show you something." He led her through a narrow passage to a hidden room behind the engine bay. Inside was a wall filled with photos, drawings, old badges, and pieces of paper covered in handwriting. "This is my memory wall," he said. "Everything I learned or loved about space, I keep here." Lyra looked closely. She saw a photo of a woman holding a baby, Jackson standing beside her. She pointed at it. "Your family?" "My sister and her son," he said. "She died a few years ago. I raised her boy for a while." Lyra looked at him with quiet respect. She had lost people too, but she rarely spoke of them. Seeing someone who carried memory in this way touched her. "You remember through things," she said. "Yeah, objects speak if you let them." They returned to the common room. Jackson handed her a small tool. "Want to help fix a cooling unit?" Lyra blinked. "You want me to do repair work?" "Why not? You seem smart, and Laura will guide you." She followed him back to the engine bay. Alara's voice explained each step simply and slowly. Lyra listened carefully, her hands trained for battle, and command now twisted wires and turned screws. She finished the repair and looked up proudly. "It works." "Nice work, Princess," Jackson said. Grinning later, they took the Artemis Blue to a nearby trading station. Lyra had never seen a place like it. So many aliens, all in one place, bartering and laughing. She wore a hood to hide her identity. "Stay close," Jackson said. "Not everyone here likes the Empire." They walked past strange shops and food stalls. Lyra saw gadgets made by hand, old machines, and colorful lights. A tall alien stepped into their path. He had gray skin and 4 arms. "Human, why bring an Imperial here?" Jackson stepped in front of Lyra. "She's a guest." "Not your concern," the alien growled. "Your kind destroyed half our supply line." Lyra stepped forward. "I had nothing to do with that. I came in peace." The alien studied her. "Then leave in peace." They moved on. Lyra felt the tension in her chest. "Do you get this often?" she asked. "Too often," Jackson replied. "But not all aliens are like him." They stopped at a stall run by a small creature with 6 eyes. Jackson picked up a box of spare parts. "You need these?" Lyra asked. "Always good to stock up. Artemis Blue is tough but old." As they walked back to the ship, Lyra asked, "Why do you stay out here?" "Alone?" Jackson looked ahead. "Out here, I can choose who I am. No one tells me what to be." Lyra nodded. She understood that more than she wanted to admit. Back on the ship, she sat in the pilot's seat and stared at the stars. "You ever think about the future?" she asked. "Sometimes," Jackson said. "But I live day to day. Too many plans fall apart." Lyra rested her hand on the console. "I always live by plans, rules, now." "I don't know. Maybe that's good," he said. That night, as she lay in her bed, Lyra could not sleep. She felt pulled in 2 directions. One part of her wanted to return to her world. The other wanted to stay on this ship, learn more, feel more. "Elara," she whispered. "Yes, Lyra. Do you think I belong here?" "You feel connected. That matters." Lyra closed her eyes. Her dreams were filled with stars, laughter, and a ship that felt more like home than any palace ever had. The next few days passed quietly aboard the Artemis Blue. Lyra spent more time walking through the ship, touching the walls, listening to Elara, and learning more about how the systems worked. Each part of the vessel held a different piece of Jackson's life, And somehow it made the ship feel more alive than any of the cold machines she had grown up with. Jackson taught her how to fly in manual mode. At first, her hands were stiff, her movements too sharp. But Jackson was patient. He gave clear instructions, let her make small mistakes, and never raised his voice. "You're doing fine," he said. "Flying is about trust. You and the ship have to learn each other." Lyra nodded. Slowly, she relaxed. The controls began to feel natural. Elara responded smoothly to her inputs. One afternoon, as they cruised over a quiet planet covered in pink clouds, Elara picked up a weak distress signal. Unregistered ship. Signal pattern is old. Message: help. Engine failure. One survivor. Jackson looked at Lyra. "We should check it out." "Yes," she agreed without hesitation. They changed course and followed the signal to a rocky moon. There, hidden in a small canyon, they found a broken-down ship. Its hull was scorched, its power systems dead. Jackson and Lyra suited up and entered the wreck. The air inside was thin, but still breathable. In a corner, they found a young alien girl curled up under a blanket. Shivering, she had pale green skin and large blue eyes filled with fear. "Easy," Jackson said softly, kneeling. "We're here to help." The girl stared at them. "You're not with the ones who left me?" "No," Lyra said. "We are not here to hurt you." Together, they brought the girl back to Artemis Blue. Elara quickly adjusted the oxygen mix to suit her needs and warmed the room. Jackson gave her food, and Lyra sat beside her, asking soft questions. The girl's name was Nari. She had been part of a trade caravan that was attacked. The others fled and left her behind when the ship crashed. "They said I was slowing them down," Nari said in a quiet voice. Lyra felt anger rise inside her. That was cruel. "You did nothing wrong," Jackson nodded. "You're safe here. We'll get you to a station where you can find someone to help." Nari looked around the ship, her fear slowly fading. "This place. It feels kind." "It is," Lyra said. "It's the only ship I've ever trusted." Later, when Nari was asleep, Lyra walked with Jackson through the quiet halls. "You didn't hesitate to help her," she said. "No one should be left behind," he replied. Not ever. Lyra thought about her own people. Back home, such kindness was rare. Everything was done for power, for gain. Helping others without asking for something in return felt different. "I used to believe strength meant control," she said. "Now, I think it might mean care." Jackson looked at her with a quiet smile. "You're changing. Or maybe I'm just learning who I really am." That night, she stood alone in the control room. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. "Elara," she said, "do you think I can live like this?" "Only you can answer that," the AI replied. "But you seem happier here." Lyra sat in the pilot's seat, hands resting gently on the controls. She wasn't sure what would come next, but for now, she was where she wanted to be. Outside, the Artemis Blue floated silently, a small ship in the vast universe. But to Lyra, it was more than that. It was a place of healing, of growth, and maybe even hope. The next morning, Lyra stood near the window, watching the stars. She held a warm cup in her hands and listened to the quiet hum of the Artemis Blue. The ship felt like it had become a part of her now, and every sound was familiar and comforting. Jackson walked in with a small smile. "We got a message from the station near Arlen 6. They can take Nari and help her find her family." Lyra nodded. "Good. She deserves a home." They told Nari the news later that day. The young girl looked nervous but smiled. "Will I ever see you again?" "You might," Lyra said. "The stars are wide, but paths cross again." Artemis Blue traveled to the station. It was a busy place with traders, explorers, and officials. They dropped Nari off safely and watched as a kind alien woman took her hand and led her away. "Thank you," Nari said, looking back one last time. Back on the ship, the silence felt strange. Lyra walked slowly to her room, thinking about how attached she had grown to the girl. She realized she had not only saved someone's life, but had also opened her own heart in a way she never had before. Later, Jackson entered the control room with a small device. I was thinking we could upgrade Alara's outer sensors. Better star mapping? Want to help? Lyra smiled. Yes. Show me what to do. They worked side by side for hours. Alara gave feedback and suggestions, and the three of them worked like a team. Lyra felt useful, not as a leader, but as someone who helped build and protect. While repairing a panel, she accidentally dropped the tool. Jackson picked it up and handed it to her. You've changed, he said quietly. You keep saying that. It's true. You smile more. You trust more. Lyra didn't reply right away. She looked at the glowing wires. I think I never knew what real trust was, until now. The next day, a ship from the Perceval Empire arrived. It was large, polished, and full of sharp lines and loud engines. Lyra watched from a distance as the royal guards exited. Her father had sent them to retrieve her. A message played through the communication system. Princess Lyra, your return is requested immediately. The Emperor grows impatient. Jackson turned to her. What will you do? Lyra took a deep breath. I don't. No, part of me wants to go. But another part, ... You don't have to decide now, Jackson said. You have time. She stepped out to meet the guards. They bowed and offered her transport. She asked them for 2 days. They agreed. That night, Lyra sat alone in the lounge. Alara spoke gently. You are torn between duty and heart. Yes, Lyra sighed. My whole life has been about duty. But now I have felt something different, real. Then maybe it's time to ask what kind of life you want. Jackson entered and sat beside her. Whatever you choose, it's your choice. That's what matters. They sat in silence, looking out at the stars. It was the silence of understanding, not emptiness. The next day, Lyra went to her room and looked at the few things she had collected on the Artemis Blue. A small plant Jackson gave her. A tool she used to fix the engine. A book from the ship's library. None of these things were valuable in her empire, but they meant something to her now. When Jackson passed by the hallway, she called out to him. Can you show me how you built? This ship? Every part? He smiled. Of course. But it'll take more than a few days. Then we start now, she said. And they did. Jackson explained every wire, every panel, every design choice. Lyra listened with care. She asked questions. She gave ideas. She felt alive. Later, when the Empire ship called again, Lyra gave her answer. Tell my father I am safe. Tell him I will return when I am ready, not before. She turned off the message and looked at Jackson. Let's see how far Artemis Blue can go. Jackson nodded. Anywhere you want. And so, the small ship left the station, heading into open space. With a human, an alien princess, and a ship that felt like home, it carried something rare across the stars, hope. Days turned into weeks as Artemis Blue traveled through the quiet edges of space. Lyra and Jackson visited small moons, empty outposts, and uncharted sectors. Each place brought new sights and small adventures. Lyra felt more free than she had ever felt in her life. She learned how to fix more of the ship's systems. Jackson taught her how to fly in tough conditions. Alara helped them map stars that no one had named before. Lyra added her own notes to the charts, giving names in her own language. One day, as they flew past a glowing nebula, Alara interrupted the calm. Unknown signal detected. Long-range distress. Coordinates locked. Jackson leaned forward. Let's check it out, Lyra agreed. We help who we can. They followed the signal to a damaged cargo vessel floating near an asteroid field. The ship had no power and weak life signs. Jackson guided Artemis Blue carefully through the rocks. Alara, scan for survivors, he said. One life form detected. Injured. Limited oxygen remaining. Lyra and Jackson prepared to board. They put on suits and grabbed emergency supplies. Inside, They found a human man trapped under fallen cargo. He was awake but weak. Hang on, Jackson said, lifting the heavy panel with Lyra's help. They got him out and brought him back to Artemis Blue. The man's name was Theo. He had been a traitor, caught in a meteor storm, and left behind by a partner who had panicked. You saved me, Theo said softly. It's what we do, Lyra replied. Over the next few days, Theo rested and healed. He shared stories about trade routes, old legends, and places where strange things had been seen. Lyra listened with interest. There's a place not far from here, he said one evening. A dead station. No one goes there anymore, but some say it holds tech from the first builders. Jackson raised an eyebrow. That's a myth. Maybe, Theo said. But I marked the location years ago. Never dare go alone. Lyra looked at Jackson. Let's go. Even if it's just a myth, I want to see it. So they set course for the forgotten station. The journey took days. When they arrived, they saw the large, dark shape of the station floating like a ghost in space. Power levels are low, Ilara reported. But there is air in some sections. They docked carefully and entered. The halls were dusty and quiet. Lights flickered. Machines sat unused dot in the center of the station. They found something unexpected. A room full of old design cores, strange tools, and a single working console. Lyra touched the console and it lit up. Welcome, a deep voice said. You have found the Arc Room. The system showed blueprints, not just for ships, but for AI systems, engines, and living metal. Some of the designs were beyond anything Lyra or Jackson had ever seen. This is real, Lyra whispered. These are the first builders. They copied as much data as they could and left quickly. As the station powered down again, Lyra looked back at it. It was like touching history dot back on the ship. Lyra stared at the new data. We could rebuild everything. We could improve Artemis Blue, Jackson added. Make her stronger, faster. Let's do it together, Lyra said. They spent the next week upgrading parts of the ship. The engines became quieter but stronger. Ilara's mind grew faster. The ship started to glow slightly from within, like it had new life. Ilara spoke one evening. Thank you, I feel more complete. So do I, Lyra said. She stood beside Jackson, both of them watching the stars. They had found something powerful. Together. Not just knowledge, but purpose. Lyra turned to him. I used to think power came from control. Now I think it comes from choice. Jackson nodded. And from building something that matters. They shared a quiet moment, feeling the ship around them. Artemis Blue, no longer just a home, had become a symbol. A place where human hands and alien heart worked together. A place where the past met. The future. Lyra touched the wall and smiled. Let's keep going. There's still more to see. And so, with their ship stronger than ever, they left behind old stars and flew into the unknown. The stars ahead of Artemis Blue shimmered like silver dust. Lyra sat in the pilot's seat while Jackson checked the navigation charts beside her. Their ship was stronger now, upgraded with ancient knowledge and fresh purpose. Still, they knew the galaxy was full of surprises. Ilara's voice echoed softly. Multiple vessels detected ahead. Not hostile. Sending identification. Jackson leaned forward. They're from the Perseval fleet. Looks like they finally found you again. Lyra stared at the screen. 3 sleek royal ships approached. She had not spoken to her father in weeks. She knew what this meant. They want me back, she said. Maybe it's time you told them how you feel, Jackson replied. The main screen lit up with a call. Lyra stepped forward and accepted it. Her father's face appeared, stern and quiet. Lyra, you have been away too long. We demand your return. You cannot keep running. Lyra stood tall. I am not running. I am learning, growing, becoming who I was meant to be. You are a princess. Your place is with your people. My place is where I can make a difference. Where I can choose. The emperor frowned. Then you are no longer welcome at court. You have until the end of the cycle to decide. The screen went black. Jackson looked at her. What do you want to do? Lyra took a deep breath. I want to show them. Show everyone what we found, what we built. They traveled to a neutral zone, a place where many species met in peace. There, they presented the knowledge from the Arc Room. Scientists, leaders, and builders came to see. All were amazed. Lyra spoke to the council. This is not just old tech. It is a bridge between what we were and what we could be. Built with both human hands and alien hearts. Whispers turned to discussions. Discussions became plans. A new alliance formed. They called it the Blue Accord, named after the ship that started it all. Artemis Blue became a symbol of unity. Other engineers came aboard to learn. Lyra and Jackson shared what they knew, not for power, but for hope. One evening, as they sat beneath the starlit ceiling in the lounge, Lyra looked at Jackson. We made something real, something that matters. And we did it together, he said. Alara chimed in. May I speak? Of course, Lyra smiled. I believe this is only the beginning. Lyra nodded. She looked at the stars and whispered, let's keep building. As Artemis Blue flew into the next chapter of space, with its lights glowing and engines steady, Lyra knew she had found her path. Not by command, not by birth, but by choice. The ship moved forward, carrying with it a dream that had once seemed impossible. And somewhere in the endless stars, that dream began to grow.